you can't just give people a room and hope that it goes well because, statistically, it's a tough first few months. I mean, statistically, in the first year, that's your best chance of reoccurrence, of, return to use. So giving someone a coach who's been down the same road and has found long-term recovery is, it's proof positive that you can do it.
I want to thank all our viewers today for watching Pillars and Beams, where we have guests that are focused on their lived experiences in the recovery provider space. And today we have Tara Heald from the Brownstone Lion House. And Tara, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and why you do what you do.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, my name is Tara, and first and foremost, I'm in long-term recovery. So my lived experience really comes from my own recovery story. So that's kind of how I got into this, is finding my own recovery in St. Paul. So the Lion House was our first project, and I basically, went into it kind of on a wing and a prayer. I really didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. I just knew that I had a passion to help women in early recovery, with aftercare. So basically, most people go to a treatment program. It's anywhere from, 2 weeks to up to a year of treatment. And statistically, we know that going straight back to the environment that you left to go to treatment in is not a great plan. So we highly recommend all of our clients, any families that we work with that have loved ones that are, trying to get sober, to think about aftercare really seriously as they do about treatment and the first step. So we usually say the 31st day is as important as the first day. So when you get out of treatment, you got to have a solid plan. And there's no better plan than going and living with a bunch of other people who are trying to recover. So the idea behind the Lion House was to create the best women's sober living in the Twin Cities. And how I did that is I started hiring people that were, in the industry for a long time, that had a lot of experience working in sober living and treatment. And I got really excited about, finding a space, and we found this incredible, huge old mansion in the Como Park neighborhood. And I started out just by filling it with furniture and love and kind of planning what it would be like there. So we opened our doors in October, the October before COVID started. So
good timing.
So this wing and a prayer turned into many, many, many prayers. But it was such an amazing, experience to find this beautiful space, which is so important. We talk about recovery being, the greatest gift you can give yourself. And if you go into a home that's run down and not well managed and not taken care of, it really creates an environment where it's hard to find that dignity and kind of get rid of that shame that a lot of people experience when getting sober. So the Lion House is a 16-woman, I like to call them recovery residences, but most people know them as sober living. So a 16-bed female recovery home. We have a live-in staff member, and then we have 2 recovery coaches that kind of work in tandem with all of our guests. So everyone that lives at the Lion House gets a personal recovery coach that they can meet with as often as they need to. So what do those recovery coaches do? Anything. So if you need to go to a meeting, if you need medical care, if you're, trying to get on state-funded insurance, anything you need, or just someone to talk to. So all of our guests get all of that. And it's just it was an incredible experience. I did it all on my own, basically, for a year. It was insane, but it was the most rewarding thing I've done in my recovery, for sure, outside of getting sober myself.
And that was during COVID, right?
Right. So we opened in October, and, by March, the world was shut down. So 16 beds in our house, and we were, we had great traction. We had tons of people coming in to tour different, treatment centers, hearing about us, loving what we were doing. The idea of having recovery coaches on staff is a new thing. That's kind of something that I kind of pioneered, I guess. And
what started you to do that?
yeah, well, I think in, the early days of sober living, it was kind of what we call a bed in a book. So that means here's your bed, here's your, big book or whatever recovery program you're studying. Good luck. And that just, everyone should have a mentor. I didn't go to sober living. Nobody talked to me about sober living when I got sober. And that really bothered me. And I think it was because I was a mom and they just said, oh, she's got to go home to her kids. And that kind of ticked me off. I was like, everyone should have the chance to take the time out for themselves to really spend time healing and building a foundation in recovery and meeting other people. I mean, you can't do this alone. It's all about the community. So that's really what I learned is like, you can't just give people a room and hope that it goes well because, statistically, it's a tough first few months. I mean, statistically in the first year, that's your best chance of reoccurrence of, return to use. So giving someone a coach who's been down the same road and has found long-term recovery is, it's proof positive that you can do it. So if you have someone like that at your, able to call them anytime, who comes to the house, who takes you to meetings, who answers any question that you have. And if they don't have the answer, they help you find the answer, that type of thing. So it's really just the idea that you can't do it alone and putting someone in a house, no matter how beautiful it is, because it is beautiful, they can't recover without guidance. You got to have guidance and you got to have someone kind of inspiring you. So that's what.
Because most peer recovery coaches are not internal to the organizations in the market these days. They're external and they're kind of available on call.
Yeah.
And some are structured meetings. So how's that working in your second home, right?
Yeah, so the Lion House Brownstone really was born out of the things that I learned at the original Lion House. So we have the Lion House, and then now our new property is the Lion House Brownstone. So like I said, all the women at the original Lion House got a recovery coach. And during the time when I was building the program, especially, in those months of COVID and the extra chaos that brought to individuals and their loved ones trying to navigate, what is sober living? What is early recovery? What are my person doing when they're living in this house? What was the question? Sorry, I go on a tangent and then it's like,
oh, it's okay. It was, I forgot what the question was.
You were asking about the brownstone. Okay, but I got to go back to the Lion House to get to the brownstone. So the biggest thing that I was running into and that my heart was bleeding for was the families and the loved ones of the women that were living in the Lion House because, giving these women the resources that they needed was great, but I was getting constant phone calls from family members. So moms, dads, kids, spouses, best friends, doesn't matter, neighbors, like whoever was caring about, these people in active use was also caring about these people, once they're on the right track and wanting to be a part of their recovery. So I was getting a lot of calls and those calls were just unmanageable. I was one person. I was just building this, coaching program. So I was coaching most of the women myself. And about 3 years into the original Lion House, I was like, we got to do something for these family members. It was like, I couldn't give them what they needed. I had a few resources that I could point them to, but, the day-to-day kind of worries and chaos that this disease brings to family members, it wasn't enough. They needed their own coach. So we started the Lion House Brownstone. So that's in the Summit Hill neighborhood, like Cathedral Hill neighborhood of St. Paul. And The idea was that they, of course, would have a recovery coach, just like the women at the Lion House. But every woman that comes into the Lion House Brownstone's family gets a family recovery coach. So,
So that's kind of the key difference between the original Lion House that I think we were there for 5 years.
yeah, we've been there for over 5 now.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and now you're 2 years at the Brownstone.
2 years at the Brownstone.
So did you implement that same model back at the original Lion House where every family gets a family coach, or is it just at the Brownstone?
It's just at the Brownstone. So we're the first ones to do this as well in a sober living setting. So we're kind of very smart about not jumping in to something before we've kind of got our legs underneath us and kind of made some mistakes and have ironed them out. But our family recovery coach has served many of the women at the original Lion House as well. She's always a resource. And then she has, recommended some other resources, she does a lot of seminars. So then a bunch of people can hop on and learn about, different coping strategies for family members and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, in my perfect world, every single family with a person going through treatment and sober living and, they would have a family recovery coach.
And what type of, how do you as the coach collaborate with the family coach to make sure that the messaging, the communication is consistent?
Yeah. So collaboration is huge. We are a 6-month program, so that's kind of our minimum stay. We've had women stay for a year, but 6 months is kind of that sweet spot of what we think is really important for people to have in this program. So when they come, that first month is really a transitional period, not just for the women, but for their families. So the beautiful thing that I get to do now that I couldn't do at the original Lion House before I had a family recovery coach, is when the family members are dysregulated, I can send them over to our fabulous family recovery coach, Lori Healy, and they can work with her. So that first month is really almost like a separation period for the families and the loved one that's working on their recovery. And we don't really come together usually until about month 2. So that family recovery coach is doing one-on-one coaching with all of the family of choice, is what we call them, because it can be anyone. Some people come in and they have 15 people that are like wanting to be a part of it, right? And then some people have one, So what that looks like then in month 2, 3, and beyond is we do collaborative family recovery meetings. So that's where I attend, the individual in recovery, the woman that's living in the Lion House Brownstone attends. So we come in together, and then the family and the family recovery coach. So we're all together. And it's really, really, really special. So it's very, very cool.
I want to come back to that, but one thing you said that kind of stood out to me was, that first month of separation, but they've already been separated when the individual was in treatment.
Right.
And that could have been for up to a year.
Right.
So you might have some families that have been separated from the individual for a year already.
Right.
And now there's like, okay, I'm going to see them again. And you're like, well, no, probably not.
Yeah, well, there's a special set of worries that come along with a loved one coming out of kind of what we call the bubble of treatment. So families tend to get really dysregulated when their loved one transitions from treatment to any other space. It's just kind of a natural occurrence, no matter how great the transition planning on the treatment side is. So we see that all the time. So we get to, just a good example would be like, well, what is my loved one doing all day? Well, are they going to meetings? Well, what about this? It's what ifs and kind of needing to know everything, which is, a huge part of kind of codependency and all of the stuff that goes into worrying about your loved one when they're in active use. So when they're in treatment, it's like, yeah, they're separated, but they kind of know they're safe. And that's kind of their time to take a deep breath and be like, okay, my loved one's in this kind of bubble. I know where they are. They're not going outside of the bubble. But when they come to us, they're outside of the bubble. They're back in, the real world. So.
And everyone's scared, I would think.
The fear is times a million. I mean, it really is. And that is what I see in these first meetings where the family members meet Lori Healy, our family recovery coach. And it's like you can see them kind of take a deep breath in that moment of like, oh, okay, we have our own person. They're going to explain to us and answer as many questions as they can for us and educate us and make sure that we are kind of in our own lane, but also a part of this in a way that's healthy and actually supportive to the woman who's, trying to get a little more independence. And that's really what that next step is being out in the real world and making some decisions on your own about what your recovery program is going to look like and what steps you're going to take. So yeah, it alleviates that. And we set boundaries immediately. Like, there's many, many women that will end up saying, you know what, this is just not a healthy text relationship between you and your mom, you and your dad, you and your sister, whoever it is. That it's like you can see that they're both just stressing each other out more than is necessary. And really, let's just save those big questions and big ideas for our respective recovery coaches, and then we'll bring them into that first collaborative, meeting. So that's, kind of the magic in helping these families to breathe a little bit and know that, giving each other space and time to heal separately is going to help them to come back together and build kind of a new way of being together.
Yeah, that's informative, because I was going to ask you to kind of peel that onion back a little and go a little deeper into the magic that happens. So thank you for making my job easier. So what else, talk about the family coach a little bit more. I mean, in my mind, it sometimes in the beginning, I would think that it's kind of like the same answer initially. You just got to be patient. It's first month. Everything's okay. This is normal. You're freaking out. Don't freak out. Breathe. Jonathan, my producer, would tell me to breathe all day.
Right.
And how does she deal with that first month where her door's probably getting pounded down and there's really nothing? What?
Yeah,
it's all new, right?
Right. So number one, first and foremost, it's validating. I know this is hard. I know you're scared. I know there's all these unknowns. It's all of that relating. And she can do that because she is a woman who's been through it with her own family. So she has tons of experience of what not to do as a family, trying to survive, navigating recovery. And she has also healed her family. So she comes from this perspective of lived experience, right? Just like I know what it's like to be 30 days sober and trying to figure it out with these women in the house. Lori understands exactly what the family members are going through. And she validates every single feeling that they have. And she also helps them to understand where all those feelings are coming from and why they're normal. We always talk about patterns of behavior and why our behaviors make sense. So why our mom and dad and whoever else is in the family, these reactions are normal, right? And same for the woman.
Now I know they're normal.
Yeah. So yeah, validation is huge, right? As soon as you tell someone, I hear you, I see you, I get it, I've been there. It's like, okay, I'm with my people. You get me. You're not going to tell me to butt out or tell me I'm crazy or tell me, those types of things. It's just coming from a totally compassionate place, like we get you, we've been there. So.
When we were talking a little bit earlier, I think it was last week, you kind of dug into more of the historical ancestor family.
Yeah.
Because, what triggered that in my mind was you said mom and dad. So can you help review that for our listeners and me a little bit deeper?
Yeah. So a huge part of kind of how we start the family programming is we do like a genogram, basically a family tree. And you would think, well, they're family. They know about each other and where they came from and things like that. But it is fascinating how many of these stories, from their family history that they don't know about each other. Even like husbands and wives that have been married for 40 years, they're going back to their grandparents and they don't know about each other's, grandparents' mental health history, resiliency and what kinds of things did they go through. And it is just, it helps the whole family to understand that maybe some of these patterns of behavior that they have right now that they are displaying come from somewhere that started before them. And when you realize that a lot of this stuff is generational and you realize that you're all still here, right? You've persevered, your ancestors persevered. It gives you kind of this pride that, we made it through because we're here. We're still, continuing to add generations. So it's really kind of cool because in that we usually find a lot of, generational trauma, addiction, a lot of, going back, a lot of different ways that family members communicated. So like patterns of communication that are kind of like handed down through generations.
And they might not all be healthy
No,
communications.
they definitely have their, ups and downs. So it's really cool because we can find like, what do we maybe want to break generationally as far as some of these patterns of behavior and what are we really proud of? And in that, there kind of becomes this almost like family, like resiliency statement. Sometimes we'll write that with families and they'll kind of outline like what their strengths are and like a commitment to each other and to getting healthy together.
My family could have used that.
All of our families could have used that.
I didn't find out until my mom passed away, that my father was an undiagnosed, untreated bipolar.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And it explains a lot of what I grew up with and why I behaved like I did. One example is I never knew what I was going to get at the dinner table with my father. So when I was a teenager, he was deaf in his left ear and I sat on his left. So I'd talk but not say anything. And of course, he'd get yell and scream and said, "Eat your dinner and get out of here." Yes. That's the whole goal, get away from you.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what I'm going to get. So,
right.
that's.
And that story is so similar to stories that we hear. Kind of like they're unraveling mysteries together and kind of unweaving this like web of where did all this stuff come from? How did we get here? And, how do we want to change? How do we want to get better? And what are these really great things that came from our ancestors do we want to continue to pass down and be really proud of? So
After you do that resiliency, I never can say that word.
You said it.
Statement, and what's next?
So that's what really makes the Brownstone so unique and so special is everything is custom curated to the women and the families that we serve. So people always want to know, like they want a menu. What am I going to get when I come to Lion House Brownstone? We can't really tell you because we create what you need. So that can be a million different things. A lot of family members end up getting into their own therapy and working on a lot of their own stuff that's uncovered during the family work. And the women are doing a lot of that similar work while they're at the Brownstone. So they're working with a therapist, they're working with a medication doctor, making sure that they're, correctly diagnosed and so many different things. So then we kind of get to that place where everyone's doing their own work. So that is what nobody does in families. That's the shift. The families sit in their loved one's disease, right? They're not looking inward. They're not doing any work on
There's
themselves.
nothing wrong with me. It's you. You're
Exactly.
the problem. I'm fine.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
Yes. So once these family members actually start doing their own deep dives into what's going on with them and how have they shown up in their loved one's disease, and it just creates this space where everyone's doing their own work. And then we come back together, and in these subsequent meetings that we have, we all do check-ins. So everyone's talking about what are you doing to heal yourself. So that is magical.
Just answered a question that popped in my head. I said, all of a sudden it was complex. It got simple. And now everybody's in treatment, so it's more complex. And how do you have that all communicated?
Right.
So you've figured that out also.
Oh, yeah.
Were there any roadblocks to getting everybody together to talk about their treatment?
Yeah. I mean, my favorite part of this is to see someone come to that first meeting, not say a word, or have they're in that stance of closed off. I'm not doing this. Why am I here? And then you can't get them to shut up. And you're like, okay, we're 2 hours in here, at month 2, 3. And they're just like, and then they're continuing the family work after the woman leaves the brownstone. So yeah, I mean, usually there's a shift. There are people that resist, and that's their choice. And then we help the woman set boundaries with that specific person. If they're not willing to do the work, then you just have to set boundaries.
When you say family work after the individual leaves, is that you and the family coach are still working with them, or another group is working with them?
Yeah, so usually it's our group that sticks with them after, and we provide anywhere from 3 to 6 months of transitional care once they leave the brownstone. Because again, that's another huge transition. So we say when you move out of the brownstone, don't change anything. So, we use facial recognition breathalyzers. We UA every other day. We do coaching, at a very minimum, probably twice a week, therapy at least once. We have all these things. So when they leave, they're like, okay, what do I need to do? We just do all the same stuff for that first month at least.
And for the family too, if they move back home.
For the family too. But the beautiful thing is that we're teaching, even though we're there to facilitate all of this work, we are teaching them how to have these conversations without us. So by month 3 and 4, they kind of lead the family meetings. We keep them on track. We make sure that everybody gets their agenda items on the agenda, what's important for each of you to talk about, those types of things. We really make sure that we advocate for each person to have a voice. But, by 3 and 4 months, they're really kind of, I'll check in first. And, it's the whole vibe. So we're helping them to learn how to have family meetings, and we're giving them all sorts of resources to, from acronym type work, here's the letters that you're going to go down, and this is what each one means, and this is how you check in. Because sometimes that's just easy, right? We have a lot of kids that we work with, so we have to adapt to that, what age group. And
it's got to be hard for the kids.
Yeah.
Unbelievably hard.
Well, it's hard when they don't have a family recovery coach. I can tell you that much. But that's what we're doing. I mean, these kids come in, they're terrified. And, 15 minutes with a group like Lori and I and the family all speaking in these new ways to each other that these kids haven't seen before, from a place of compassion and listening to each other and not interrupting, because we don't allow that. Everyone has a voice. These kids are like, oh, well, I want to have a voice too, and then they start to get comfortable in that, and they see the work that everyone's doing, and they start to understand that, mom didn't just choose this, right? Mom didn't choose this. This is a disease, and now we're all getting better. This is treatment, right? Just like you would treat any other disease. This is how we treat addiction. We come together, we tell the truth, we communicate, we, say the things that are really hard to say sometimes. All of those things, we're teaching these family members how to do that, and they've never done it before. Most of them have never done it before.
Well, it seems like you have a process that you've evolved to. I think we talked about it was permission, empowerment, where you walk along with them, and then they're independent. You're
Right.
still there. And it seems like you keep repeating that cycle, but in different ways of implementing it, depending on who the audience is.
Absolutely.
And how did that evolve?
Yeah. So I think that those three pieces are kind of universal for people in early recovery. In the beginning, when you're coaching someone who's very, very new to recovery, they need permission because there's so much shame, so much guilt. They're just hating themselves that they need permission from someone else to, do the work, to care about themselves, to be honest, to advocate for themselves, to say what's really on their mind, those types of things. To be honest, they need permission. And then kind of after, you've been working with them for a few months, you really want to empower them. It's like that motivational interviewing type stuff. You're trying to get them to kind of light bulb, in those moments without you having to say like, I think you need to be honest about this. Or I think they kind of start coming to those conclusions on their own. And that's the empowerment then. It's because when I see you do that, I call you out on it. I'm like, do you see what you just did? You just did that thing all by yourself. I didn't tell you to do it. Nobody else told you to do it. You're, doing this on your own. So that's kind of that empowerment piece. And by the time they leave us, we want them to be in that independent phase where it's like they're doing this because it's just how they communicate now. It's how they show up. It's the self-love that they have for themselves is so strong that they're not willing to not set boundaries. They're not willing to let things slide. They have to speak up. They have to be authentic and, self-care. That's the biggest thing.
It seems to me that would work for just about everybody.
Oh,
Well, not just people in recovery, but, when I grew up, it was like kids didn't talk.
right.
And if the adults were, I'll give you an example. My uncle was born in Poland, definitely old school, sheet metal guy. And I remember once walking into the living room where the adults were talking. I got whacked in the back of the head.
Yeah.
What are you doing in here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is adults.
Right.
And that night I asked my mom, I said, she goes, you got two choices. You can come in the room and make sure you're far enough away so he doesn't smack you, or just don't come in the room and it's all adults.
I know. Yeah.
And now he loved me. I know he loved me.
Right.
And
Well, that came from somewhere in his generational,
Yeah.
He didn't make that up. Like
No.
that comes from, what he knows to be the way to communicate and what's, right or what's expected. So,
But, if he would stand up for you, he would be there for you. They kind of raised me until I was like 10 years old, my aunt and uncle. So,
yeah.
but I learned to avoid that hand because it was as big as my head.
Right. And that hand shows up in so many different ways. That's the interesting thing when you're working with generational trauma is like that hand doesn't have to be physical. It can be, completely isolating children from their parents, like having no love or like physical touch. I mean, there's so many different things that we find out in these families from, serious abuse to just completely mental things that aren't even seen that happen, It's really wild, but it's all kind of getting everyone to recognize that it makes sense how we got here, right?
And when
These are
things
the things
make
that came
sense,
before.
then
We can accept them.
And then you got 2 feet on the ground. And now I got somewhere to stand.
Right.
Now where do I go next? And how do you help them take that next step once they understand all their family trauma?
Yeah. Yeah. So a big part of that is, exploring what's important to everyone. We talk a lot about like, what are your family values? Once you've kind of figure out what is that resiliency statement, what makes us really special? How do we want to show up for each other? It's like taking that to another level of figuring out like what our core values, our hopes and dreams for this family, and how do we want the next generation to have it better than we had it. So it's just tons of open and honest
every
conversations.
Family wants that. What's better for the next generation?
Absolutely. So, coming together, and they do a lot of individual work with Lori. So, mom can be doing her own work with Lori, and dad can be meeting with Lori alone. Just the family meets with Lori, so they're working out a bunch of these things. They're saying things that, in front of Lori that maybe they're not comfortable saying in front of their loved one who's in early recovery. So it's just giving them a space to have complete and open, honest conversations with each other. When you do that, all of a sudden they start realizing like, hey, we're all feeling a lot of the same stuff. Maybe we react to it in a different way. Maybe our coping mechanisms look different, but it all comes back to fear, right? That's that kind of central reaction to this disease is fear. For the individual, for the family, that's where it is. So it's just talking and then coming up with, how do we show up in these family meetings and resolve any of the underlying resentments that we have? And not just that, how do we celebrate all the wins? So
how do you celebrate the wins?
Right. So, for these families, they come together and they're eventually having these family meetings together. And you can imagine it just like you think of all these families that just dread going to Thanksgiving together because so-and-so's mad at so-and-so and not talking to so-and-so, all of that generational stuff. They never get to that place because nothing festers. They're getting together and having Sunday, weekly family meetings with everyone. And if you can't be together, you're on Zoom. And if you can't Zoom, you're on a phone call, whatever it takes. And then inviting the kids to those meetings when appropriate, and getting them learning how to do all those skills. So.
And I was in Minnesota. My ex-wife's family's from here, and big family. I quickly figured out I'm going to carve the turkey and I'm going to clean dishes. And when I'm carving the turkey, I have to focus on the knife, so I'm not listening or looking at them. And when I'm cleaning dishes, it sounds kind of rude. My back's to them. Right. I really can't hear them, and they're not going to talk to me. And then luckily I had some babies, so they needed naps, so I just volunteered to take the baby home for a nap.
Well, whatever works, right?
It worked.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Right. Yeah. So that's what we're hoping not to happen anymore, right? Is to just get everyone at least at their own level of comfort. We never force anyone to talk or to do anything, right? It's all about getting people to feel comfortable sharing what they're comfortable sharing. And that's where you see, like, maybe I'm only comfortable saying my high and my low for the week, for the first month. And then by the second month, I'm telling you about, my own therapy and all of the different things that I'm doing to get better. And then by the time we're doing family, meetings at home, I'm the director and I'm like, running the whole show. And that's what we see, right? Rarely, and people are uncomfortable doing this work. Absolutely. It's tough work. It's hard. It really is.
It's hard to admit I might not be right.
Right. Might not be right. I might have had a part in this. No family member wants to think that they had a part in their loved one's addiction. Of course not. Right. But we know that that's the way this disease, festers. It feeds on everyone. It's the only disease that really can kill the whole family. It really can. It's that devastating. So.
It seems like you're kind of got momentum, that the first experience was 5 years, and then you took those learnings, and now, as we talked before, you just had your first kind of, let's evaluate where we started and where we're at, and that's in 2 years.
Yeah.
And what do you think helped that acceleration from a 5-year learning cycle now a 2-year learning cycle? Is it just cumulative?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I do is I hire people that lived in the Lion House. So now, my chef and kind of one of my staff members at the Brownstone is a former Lion House resident. So, they understand my mission. They know what I'm thinking. So when you're in that rhythm of, where first and foremost, we are fellow women in recovery. So everyone that works for me is in recovery and has a ton of experience with kind of how I built this and what's important to me. So when you have staff that has literally transformed their own lives in your programming, it's kind of, you get in a rhythm. So, it was a lot easier at the Brownstone to recognize when things weren't working and how we wanted to tweak things. And, we really have been so intentional in every kind of new implementation we've made and changing things. And, we've really taken our time, and we get a lot of feedback. We have a ton of alumni at this point, a ton of family alumni, a ton of resident alumni. So we talk to them and, figure out what worked for you, what didn't work for you, what do you wish we had that we didn't, all of that stuff. So again, it all leads back to communication, community, staying connected, all of that. And that's kind of how you learn.
You're making my job so much easier. You're answering questions I don't even have to ask.
Yeah. When it comes to this stuff, it's, you can't shut me up. So
okay.
Yeah.
Keep going. You're good.
Yeah. So it's really been, it feels like magic now when we're all in a room and we're talking about this stuff. It's like someone has a great idea and then everyone just gets excited, right? Or someone stands up and tells the truth about something that's not working, and we all kind of sigh relief because maybe we were thinking the same thing but weren't brave enough to say it. It's that kind of synergy between coworkers that we're a family. Like we know everything about each other's own families and own recovery stories, and we just support each other. Lori's helped me through some family stuff, and I'm always a sounding board for her because she's a family member in recovery. She doesn't know what it's like to be me, to be a person in recovery. So she, it's just that stuff. It's never having an ego. It's always going to each other to learn from each other and to try to get better.
That's the goal.
And not be afraid to screw up. You can't be afraid to make a mistake.
Oh, yeah. So you only have one Lori. I mean, she's got to be a busy woman.
She is insanely busy.
So how many alumni do you have?
Oh, gosh. I don't know that number. At this point, I would say 5 years in, hundreds, right? 100. I keep in contact with at least 100 at this point.
And then Lori's in contact with their families, so.
Yep. Well, and that's with the Brownstone, so that's been around for 2 years. But yeah, she's worked with many, many, many of the families. She still works with, and our therapists too. We have a ton of, preferred providers that work with our families and our individuals well after they're in our care. So. And
then Lori and you are communicating with them when things might bubble up?
Yeah. Obviously there's all sorts of confidentiality behind that and stuff, but it's knowing that when our relationship in a professional sense ends, that they still have some support, right? So whether that's in the community, like 12-step sponsorship, Dharma recovery, whatever their kind of base program is, to making sure that they have a therapist if that's what they need, or, an eating disorder coach, or, the right kind of behavioral therapy that it's all of those things. We never send someone away like, hope it goes well. Yeah. It's like, nope, I know all the things you're doing and all the people you're doing them with. And, we just are a continuum of care that way. We're never not a resource for these people and their loved ones. It's just, we're always there. So.
And that word care is standing out. And directly, you're saying we care. We want to know what's going on with you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A lot of these women are my best friends now. Yeah. So I see them at meetings all the time. And yeah, it's really cool.
Good. So what's next?
Oh, well, the Brownstone's only a little over 2 years old. And, we just kind of, like you said, had that meeting of just really looking at what we've done the last 2 years. And, we partner with the Irishman and Associates, which is our full case management intervention. So I do interventions. A couple of my other employees do interventions. We do full case management. So that's kind of what we talked about, that aftercare.
Right.
So when they leave the Brownstone, we continue to breathalyze them. We continue to coach them. We continue to be a resource for them and their families in whatever capacity they need. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just seeing the absolute miracle of working and healing the whole family. That's what I want to focus on next. The would rather build that out and make sure that there's enough Lori's for all these families to benefit from. Because if you take, a person in recovery and you kind of put them in this environment where they're making all this progress, and then you try to put them back in that environment and nothing's changed there, the chances that they're going to succeed in recovery go way down. So I want to make sure, and that's kind of, why I'm really interested in just getting the word out that there are these services, right? These family members do not have to sit and hope and wonder and wish and all of that. You don't need to suffer in that, heartache alone. You have all these resources. So growing that practice is huge. I want to work with more families. I want to do more interventions. I want to, help educate treatment centers how their family programs could be better. That's a big one.
That's very big.
Yeah.
I mean, even after COVID, the numbers, we know that in COVID, addictions doubled. Yep. But I think the last report in 2022 or 3 was it's gone down, but now it's only 50% more than it was before COVID.
Right.
And
then it's scary.
So you've got a good infrastructure now for what you're doing, but did Lori, I want to go back to Lori.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a formal training program, like a PRSS? Is there a family recovery
Right. So
program?
She is a peer recovery specialist, so she's certified in that space.
Right,
She's also,
I know that.
She's also craft certified. So if you don't know what that is, everyone should Google it. I don't want to go into it because it's not my program. So if I blunder it, but it's a very compassion-based, recovery program for families and individuals.
Okay, so there is a formal education training program for that.
Yes, so she has that. And then she also was certified under ARISE, which is kind of an intervention, case management, family program practice that comes from a place of invitation. So it's more of an invitational environment to the person that is struggling with addiction from the family to kind of, hey, we're doing this work. We're talking about this. We're talking about how addiction is present in our family. We hope that you'll join us type of thing. So she's doing that.
Thank you for explaining all that.
Yeah. So
I didn't know 2 of those.
Yeah. So I'm not, specific on any of those, and neither is she. She comes from a place where she takes what she likes from everything that she does, and she kind of makes her own thing. And that's what makes her so unique and special. And I think that's what you have to do, because there is no one size fits all for these families or these individuals.
Right.
They have to have custom care suited to their needs, and the family's no different,
Great. So that's so now you need more Loris and more of you.
More Loris, more me's, more yous, getting the word out.
Let's see how we can continue. I know that you said let's not talk about talking more until you graduate with your master's in May.
Studying psychology right now, so that, and so just getting through that, and then I'm definitely willing to continue the conversation because I love to hear ideas from other people too.
Yeah, I'll try to connect when different guests. I think I reached out for you. And,
you connected me with someone already.
Guests are ready, and we'll see how they're busy, but I think it can help.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't happen, let me know what I can do to help. And I'm always eager to learn something new. This is something totally new for me, and
you're doing great.
Oh, thank you. My guests have more experience than me in doing this. So, thank you for watching Pillars and Beams. We're trying to build a recovery area, one pillar and one beam at a time.